Joining me now, Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Megan Hayes, former director of message planning in the Biden White House, and Michelle Price, Associated Press White House reporter. Welcome to you all. Dave, reaching out to you first here, because DOJ requesting the unsealing of Epstein grand jury transcripts. I mean, that is the most concrete step that the Trump administration has taken so far to try to advance a level of transparency. But will it answer questions that are still lingering about this case?
No, Alex, it's an attempt to placate the base. But even if the transcripts are released, and I doubt they will, because after all, Ghislaine Maxwell has an appeal pending before the Supreme Court, and she is urging the courts to reject the release of these documents because it could prejudice her own future cases. So I don't think they will be released. But even if they are released, the Trump administration, in their own request, has said that they will redact the names of any unindicted third-party co-conspirators. That material is what the public is demanding. That's what the base wants. They want to know the names of the unindicted co-conspirators. So even if these transcripts are released, and I doubt they will be, they're not going to give the people what they want. This matter is not going away anytime soon unless and until the Epstein files are released, and that's not happening.
Yeah. Megan, given how things work in the White House, is it plausible that the president had no advance knowledge of the Maxwell move?
In a normal White House, in the Biden White House, the Obama White House, the Bush White House, yes, that would have been absolutely normal. The DOJ is a separate arm of the administration of the executive branch in the White House. But this administration, this is 100% normal. These people do not make a move without Donald Trump say so. Todd Blanche is Donald Trump's personal attorney who just happens to be cosplaying as the deputy attorney general at the Department of Justice. So this is not something that Donald Trump would have no knowledge of. He directed this.
So, Michelle, here's how President Trump responded Wednesday after Vice President Vance denied that he and others were planning an Epstein strategy session. Listen to this.
The whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country. And that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit.
Okay, so NBC News is reporting that the meeting did, in fact, take place at the White House Wednesday night, and Epstein was among the topics discussed. What more are you learning about that meeting?
I mean, Alex, it's hard to believe that this isn't a thing that is discussed more often than just one meeting. This has been an ongoing internal communications issue for this White House. And the message has been convoluted, and it has been a self-inflicted wound for weeks or months now. You saw the way the vice president responded this week. He was very careful in his language, saying there was no meeting scheduled specifically to talk about Epstein. There was a lot of wiggle room in that response. But we're expecting this to be an ongoing discussion here at the White House because it's still something that's being debated internally about whether to release the transcripts and the audio, potentially, of that interview that Todd Blanche did with Ghislaine Maxwell just a few weeks ago.
So, Megan, what would your advice have been if you were a part of that Epstein strategy meeting? I mean, how can Trump dig himself out of this mess? And by the way, he thinks of himself as a marketing expert. Would he even be open to advice?
Well, it's hard to dig yourself out of something when you're so blatantly involved in it and tried to play this off as a hoax from the beginning. It's unclear to me why he let his base dig into this so much. I think that they are going to try to do everything they possibly can to turn the page. They've tried investigating Obama. Now they're doing a Russia meeting with Putin. Like, they are doing everything they can to try to turn the page. But the problem is the base, including people in Congress, in the Oversight Committee, are asking people to and subpoenaing people to come testify. So this is just going to drag out longer. Those people are coming up to testify in October. This is months more of this just trickling out drip by drip. The best thing to have been is not do the big press conference at the beginning with those binders when they all stood there, and not to release a letter saying there were no files.
So, Dave, ABC News reports that Maxwell said nothing during her meeting with Todd Blanche that would be harmful to President Trump, adding the conversations were recorded and the administration is considering releasing transcripts. So what does this suggest to you? I mean, you thought the grand jury transcripts would never be released. How about these?
Oh, no, I think this will be released at least in part because it helps the president. The reason why they had this private meeting between the number 2 person at the DOJ and a convicted sex trafficker was because they wanted information about Democrats who were involved, and they wanted information that would exonerate Donald Trump. And it looks like Ghislaine Maxwell is playing ball. How do I know? Well, she got sent to a minimum security prison, a club fed, right after the interview. And there's a possibility of a pardon down the road. So they want this information out there. But again, that information, just like the grand jury transcripts, are not going to satisfy the ravenous base who have been promised that there's an Epstein list and there's an Epstein file, and so far have received neither.
You know, to that transfer point, Megan, how unusual is it that more than a week after Maxwell was moved, the White House has not provided details of who approved it, how she was moved, why she was moved? How unusual is that?
I mean, listening to the experts that deal with the Department of Prisons and the Bureau of Prisons, excuse me, I think that it's probably very unusual. I just don't think that these things are made public because you don't have someone this high profile. You also know that people who are accused and convicted of sex offenses do not get to move to a minimum security prison where it's very white collar crime. This is not something that most people would have the benefit of getting. So I don't necessarily know that we've ever been in a situation like this to have it be unusual. I think the whole thing from start to finish and moving her is unusual because this is not something where these types of criminals go.
Michelle, has the White House ever addressed the survivors?
No, they have not. And it's something that the president has made clear he doesn't like talking about. You know, every time this is brought up, he often lashes out at the reporter who asked the question, saying, why are you still talking about it? The only time it has even sort of come up was when the president was questioned about his comments that he ended his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein because he said that Jeffrey Epstein took some of his employees, in his words, he said, stole them. And one of those employees, according to the president, was Virginia Giuffre, who is one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. But the president over and over has said that he had no advance knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. So far, this is a thing that the White House has not wanted to speak about.
Well, Megan, Congresswoman Ayanna Presley is pushing for a public hearing of the Oversight Committee to give survivors the opportunity to provide testimony if they wish to do so, saying, quote, if we are to hold powerful people to account, our investigation must center the voices they tried to silence. So the White House, can it force the White House to be more responsive to survivor perspectives now?
I don't think so. I think that you see a lot of survivors out in the media. I think you should see survivors if they would like to testify in front of Congress. If the Oversight Committee is subpoenaing people, they should also be allowed to give their testimony. At the center of this is a sex trafficking ring, and there are hundreds of victims. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes in the political back and forth. And I think that's the one thing that we cannot lose sight about. So I would ask reporters to keep asking the president about these survivors, because at the core of this is that it is them, and they are the ones that matter the most.
Last question quickly to you, Dave, because House Oversight Chair James Comer this week subpoenaed DOJ for the Epstein files, also subpoenaed documents from a list of high-profile figures, including Bill and Hillary Clinton, former attorneys general, but notably not Alex Acosta, Trump's former Secretary of Labor, who resigned in July 2019 when he felt Epstein had become a distraction for the first Trump presidency. What light can Acosta shed on this case?
Everything. I mean, the whole non-prosecution agreement was signed by Alex.
The United States is grappling with what critics describe as a perilous moment in its democratic history, marked by an escalating campaign of retribution from the Trump administration. The White House is accused of diverting federal resources to suppress the fallout from the Epstein scandal, which threatens to overshadow the presidency, while targeting political adversaries with unprecedented aggression. The administration's actions are framed not as governance but as a calculated effort to shield the president and punish his opponents, raising alarms about the erosion of democratic norms. Recent moves include deploying the military against foreign drug cartels, a low-priority threat according to national security assessments, and the abrupt dismissal of the IRS head, the fifth such replacement in the 6 months since President Trump's second term began. More controversially, the FBI has been tasked with locating Texas Democratic lawmakers who left the state to block a Republican plan to redraw congressional maps. This gerrymandering effort, critics argue, could secure a GOP House majority post-2026 midterms. Notably, these lawmakers have committed no federal crimes, Yet their resistance to electoral manipulation has made them targets, prompting accusations that the FBI is being misused to hunt political dissidents rather than criminals. The Justice Department's actions against New York Attorney General Letitia James represent a significant escalation. James, who previously secured over $500 million in civil penalties against the Trump Organization for fraudulent practices, now faces multiple investigations. A grand jury is examining whether she violated the president's civil rights or mishandled cases involving the Trump Organization and the NRA. Additionally, a special attorney is probing mortgage fraud allegations against James and Democratic Senator Adam Schiff, another Trump adversary. James denounced the investigations as blatant political retribution, with her office vowing to continue defending New Yorkers' rights. Her attorney labeled the probes a dangerous escalation of the administration's vendetta, warning that weaponizing the justice system threatens all Americans. The administration's tactics extend beyond elected officials. A former DHS chief of staff, targeted for his 2018 anonymous op-ed criticizing Trump, described the personal toll of such retribution. Facing accusations of treason and DOJ investigations, he has required multiple legal teams to address lawsuits, business losses, and even stalkers incited by claims he should face death for dissent. He highlighted the broader impact. Targeted individuals face financial ruin, security threats, and life disruptions, such as inability to secure mortgages, intended to deter opposition. To counter this, he launched a platform to crowdsource legal defenses for whistleblowers, underscoring that such measures should be unnecessary in a democracy. Critics, including scholars like Jason Stanley, label this competitive authoritarianism, where democratic processes become ceremonial relics. The Justice Department, once a pillar of impartiality, is accused of transforming into a tool for settling scores and protecting the president. A weaponization working group claims to address justice system abuses but effectively scrutinizes prosecutors investigating Trump and his allies. Agency purges and targeting of figures like Obama-era officials, prompted by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, further illustrate this trend. A former official warned that 70% of predicted retaliatory actions have already occurred, with fears of untapped powers, like surveillance, being weaponized next. This pattern, described as a revenge presidency, draws historical parallels to warnings from America's founders about the dangers of vengeful politics corroding the republic. The rapid dismantling of democratic guardrails, cloaked in Orwellian rhetoric, has outpaced even pessimistic forecasts. Elected officials, journalists, and civil servants face unrelenting pressure, with investigations serving as punishment regardless of outcomes. Critics warn that this assault on democracy, federalism, and the principle of government serving the people marks a dangerous turning point, with the nation's future hanging in the balance as it navigates this unprecedented challenge.